I never imagined one weekend could redraw the lines between trust and temptation. Yet, as I look back now, I can trace every moment that led me there, the laughter, the glances, the quiet invitations disguised as kindness. I thought I was visiting family to heal. I didn't know I was walking into something planned. After my breakup with Caleb, I needed distance from everything familiar. 3 years of love had dissolved into suspicion, late-night arguments, and the quiet ache of betrayal. When it ended, I felt hollow, like someone had turned off all the lights inside me. So when my cousin Ryan called and told me, "You should come stay a few days. Get out of your head," it felt like an escape I couldn't refuse. Ryan and I grew up more like brothers than cousins. He was the confident one, the type who carried laughter like an aura. I, on the other hand, lived quietly, thoughtful, cautious, sometimes too cautious. It had been months since I'd seen him, but when I arrived at his house that Friday evening, his grin was as bright as ever. "Man, you look like you've seen ghosts," he said, pulling me into a hug. "We're gonna fix that. Weekend therapy, cousin style." That's when I met Leo. He was sitting on the couch, one arm draped lazily along the backrest, watching us with calm interest. "Ethan, right?" he said, standing to shake my hand. "Ryan's told me you were coming." His voice was low and even, almost soothing, the kind that fills silences without crowding them. There was a quiet confidence in him that caught me off guard, steady, grounded, maybe even dangerous in its calmness. Over dinner, the three of us slipped easily into conversation. Ryan told stories that had us laughing until the candles flickered. Leo mostly listened, but every so often, he'd ask something that landed deeper than expected, about my work, my past, my breakup. His eyes didn't wander when I spoke, they stayed fixed, as if he was listening to more than just words. There was something magnetic in that attention, the kind I hadn't felt in months. By the time dessert was over, Ryan poured another round of wine and said, "Let's make it interesting. Truth or dare? Old times, remember?" I laughed. "We're too old for that." "Never," he said, smirking. "Besides, Leo's never played with us." The first few rounds were harmless, truths about exes, dares involving silly impressions. But the questions turned sharper. Ryan asked Leo if he'd ever wanted something he couldn't have. Leo looked at me before answering, "Yes." The air thickened, but Ryan only laughed and poured more wine. Later, when Ryan went to take a call, Leo and I were left alone in the soft hum of the kitchen light. "He told me what happened with your ex," Leo said quietly. "You didn't deserve that." I smiled faintly. Maybe I did. Maybe I ignored the signs. He shook his head. "Or maybe you trusted the wrong person." The words lingered. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Ryan returned, all warmth and noise again, breaking the tension like nothing had passed. The night stretched lazily after that, music low, conversation easy but edged with something unspoken. When I stood to go to bed, Ryan clapped my shoulder. "Glad you're here, man. You need a weekend of honesty." His grin was playful, but his tone carried something underneath, something I couldn't read. As I reached the doorway, he added, almost casually, "You trust us, right?" I turned, caught between confusion and amusement. "Of course," I said. Ryan's smile widened. "Good. Then relax. You're safe here." I nodded, though something in me stirred uneasily. That night, as I lay in the guest room, I could hear faint laughter from down the hall, Ryan's voice, Leo's softer one following. I tried to ignore the flicker of curiosity their closeness sparked, tried to convince myself I was imagining the way their glances had carried weight. But the thought stayed, hovering in the quiet like a whisper I couldn't quite push away. I closed my eyes, telling myself it was nothing, that I was simply reading too much into everything. Still, somewhere beneath that rational voice, another one murmured a warning, "Not everything kind is safe." That I should have listened. It began with small things, tiny fractures that, at first, I mistook for routine. A missed text here, a cancelled dinner there. Liam had always been busy, but lately his busyness came wrapped in secrecy. His phone, once left carelessly on the table, was now always face down. His laughter, once spontaneous, now sounded practiced that I remember one morning when he rushed out earlier than usual. He kissed me on the forehead and said, "Don't wait up tonight, it's a long meeting." The words lingered after the door closed. It wasn't the meeting that unsettled me, it was the way he avoided my eyes when he said it. For weeks, I tried to convince myself it was just work. People change, love adapts. But sometimes love becomes a performance, and I was beginning to feel like the only audience left that I and the evenings, I'd set the table for two and wait. The food would go cold long before he came home, and when he finally did, his apologies sounded rehearsed, gentle, warm, and hollow. I wanted to believe him, but every word he spoke felt like a thread pulling loose from something we once wove together. One night, while folding laundry, I noticed a faint scent on his shirt, something expensive, floral, and unfamiliar. It wasn't mine. I told myself it was perfume from a colleague, but my hands trembled as I held the fabric close. That scent stayed with me long after I put the shirt away. The following weekend, Liam suggested we take a break from the city. He booked a cabin by the lake, something he said we both needed. The gesture felt like an apology he couldn't voice, and I accepted it without question. Maybe I wanted to believe he was still trying. For a moment, the weekend felt like before, our laughter echoing against the water, the warmth of his hand against mine. But even in those quiet hours, there was a distance I couldn't bridge. When I looked at him, it felt like looking at a memory instead of the man beside me. Back home, that distance grew. I'd wake to find him already dressed, leaving with a half smile and a promise to call. Some nights he wouldn't return until long after midnight. The first few times, I stayed awake waiting for him. Eventually, I stopped, then came the message that it was an ordinary afternoon. I was working when his phone buzzed on the counter. He was in the shower, and the screen lit up just long enough for me to see the preview. "See you tonight, Redheart." The words were simple, but they carved through me like glass. My heart pounded, my breath caught. I stared at the phone, frozen between trust and truth. When Liam came out, I said nothing. He noticed my silence but didn't ask. He simply kissed my forehead again and walked out the door, leaving the faint scent of cologne and lies behind him. That night, I didn't wait at home. I couldn't. Something inside me needed to know that I took the train across the city, hands trembling the whole way. He'd mentioned a work dinner at the Royalton Hotel, so that's where I went. I told myself I'd only look from a distance, that I just needed reassurance. But when I saw him, standing in the lobby, laughing, his hand resting on another man's arm, it felt like the floor vanished beneath me. The man was taller than me, confident, his smile effortless. Liam leaned in close, too close, his expression soft and unguarded in a way I hadn't seen in months. It was a look that once belonged to me that I didn't confront him. I couldn't. I just stood there, hidden behind a column, my chest aching with disbelief. The scene unfolded like a cruel dream, his laughter, the way their shoulders brushed, the quiet intimacy of two people who no longer needed to hide from each other. When they walked toward the elevator together, I turned away. My reflection in the glass doors looked unfamiliar, pale, stunned, hollow. I walked out into the cold air, each step heavier than the last. The city blurred around me. I don't remember how long I walked, only that my mind kept replaying every moment, every lie disguised as love. When I finally reached home, the apartment felt foreign, like a museum of a life that no longer belonged to me. The framed photos, the scent of his cologne, the faint sound of his laughter echoing in my memory, it all felt unreal. That I sat on the couch in silence until dawn began to stain the sky. I didn't cry. I couldn't. It was as if the tears refused to come, trapped somewhere between heartbreak and numbness. That night, something inside me broke, not just my trust in Liam, but my belief in what we were. He hadn't left yet, but I knew, deep down, that he was already gone, and I knew, too, that the next time he came home, I would have to face the truth I'd spent months running from. Liam came home just past midnight. I heard the door open, the soft creak, the familiar jingle of his keys, and for a fleeting second, my heart reacted the way it used to. Then I remembered what I'd seen. He stepped into the living room, startled to find me still awake. His hair was damp from the mist outside, his shirt slightly wrinkled. "You're up," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I couldn't sleep," I replied, my voice quieter than I intended. Silence stretched between us, heavy and uneven. I studied him as if seeing him for the first time, not the man I'd loved, but the stranger he had become. That I wanted to scream, to demand explanations, but when the moment came, all I asked was, "Are you happy, Liam?" He froze. The question hung in the air, fragile and dangerous. He looked at me, really looked, and for a moment, his mask slipped. "Ethan," he began, but the rest of the sentence dissolved before it reached me. "Don't," I said softly. "Don't lie. Not tonight." He dropped his gaze to the floor, his shoulders sagging beneath the weight of everything unspoken. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said after a long pause. "It just did." I laughed then, not out of humor, but disbelief. "You don't accidentally fall into someone else's arms, Liam. You choose to." He winced, as if the truth itself had struck him. "I was lonely," he murmured. "I thought we were drifting apart." I wanted to tell him how many nights I stayed up waiting for him, how many times I ignored my own intuition to protect his image in my mind. But what was the point? The pieces of us were already scattered, and words couldn't put them back together. He sat down on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. I care about you, he said. You're important to me. Important. Not loved. Not needed. Just important, like a framed photograph you can't throw away, even after it stops meaning something. That I nodded slowly, swallowing the ache in my throat. Then why does it feel like you already left a long time ago? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence was answer enough. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time became meaningless. Finally, he stood up, walked to the bedroom, and began to pack. I didn't stop him. The sound of the zipper sliding shut was the softest, cruelest goodbye I'd ever heard. That I watched him gather his things, the jacket I'd bought him last winter, the mug he always used, the book he never finished. Every object felt like a ghost of something we used to be. At the doorway, he hesitated. I'm sorry, he said quietly, still avoiding my eyes. Me too, I whispered. Then he was gone. The door clicked shut, and the apartment sank into a silence so deep it almost had a pulse. For a long while, I just sat there. The room still smelled like him, cedar and mint, faint and fading. The moonlight spilled across the floor, touching the spaces he used to fill. I thought about the first time we met, about how he once told me, don't ever get used to me. I finally understood what he meant. Days blurred after that. I went through motions, work, meals, sleep, but everything felt weightless, disconnected. Friends asked if I was okay, and I told them I was. I lied. Healing isn't graceful, it's messy and slow. It's waking up one morning and realizing you've stopped checking your phone for a message that will never come. But somewhere between the sleepless nights and quiet mornings, something inside me began to shift. I started writing again, not about him, but about me. The version of me that existed before Liam, before love turned into longing. I filled pages with fragments of memory, with pieces of pain I could finally name. That I didn't write to forget him. I wrote to remember myself. Weeks later, I passed the hotel where I had seen him. I stopped, not out of bitterness, but closure. The memory no longer cut the same way. It simply existed, like a scar that had learned to stop bleeding. That night, I returned home to an apartment that felt different. Lighter. Quieter. I sat by the same window where I once watched the sunrise after he'd fallen asleep beside me. Only this time, the silence felt like peace, not absence. That he left me shattered that night, yes, but I realized I wasn't broken beyond repair. The crack simply made room for light to enter, and in that fragile, glowing quiet, I finally whispered to myself, you made it through.